So since we're running behind, I should just get us started, right? All right. Thank you. I'd like to call to order the September 28th, 2023 meeting of the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority. My name is Drew Combs, the chair for this year, and I will roll call. So I see Director Pine is here. I see Director Brica is here, and Director Koo is alternate Director Koo is sitting in for Director Stone. And do we know about Director Eisenberg, whether she'll be attending or not?
We do anticipate Director Eisenberg will join us in process.
Okay, thanks. For this moment, we have 4 board members present. And so we'll go on to approval of the agenda. So we'll first open it up for public comment on the agenda. Is there anyone who would like to provide a public comment on the agenda? Okay, all right, well, closing public comment on approval of the agenda. I'll bring it back to the dais to see if we have any questions or a motion to approve. Second, Director Abrica.
Fine.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve from Director Abrica. The agenda.
To approve the agenda. I'll second that.
Okay, and we have a second from Director Pine, and so then we'll go into a roll call vote. Director Pine?
Yes.
Director Combs is a yes. Director Abrica?
Yes.
Director Koo?
Yes.
All right. So 4 directors present voted to approve the agenda. With that, we'll go on to approval of meeting minutes. The minutes from June 8th, 2023 special board meeting, and the minutes of June 22nd, 2023 regular board minute, and the minutes of August 24th regular board meeting. We'll open it up for public comment on agenda item 3, approval of the minutes from the meetings that I listed.
So we do have one comment from Xenia Hemner, who requested that one of her comments be amended. The board has the update on the dais. So when we do approve the June 8 minutes, we want to recognize the amended June 8 minutes.
Okay.
And for the record, I would just ask that you state what those changes, those proposed changes are.
I can read it.
Okay, I'll let the board clerk go through the exact changes that have been requested and will be a part of any motion to approve.
So the updated comment, resident Xenia Hemner asked about the sequence of proposed project components and if the sequence for construction was accounted for in this model review. Mr. Zhu explained that replacing the Newell Bridge is good and the other project components and their sequence were considered.
Okay. All right, thanks. So yeah, happy to accept that comment. I will just take this is an opportunity to remind that the minutes are not verbatim minutes that are kept, and so obviously there is some license as it relates to making having to summarize the comments, and that obviously there are full-length versions of the meeting that's provided for anyone to recall, to make sure that they hear exactly what was said. Director Abrica? So we did call for public comment on that, right? That was the only thing that came in, and so that will be a part of any approval. And so now I'll go into Director. Okay, so closing public comment, I'll bring it back to the dais and see if there is any additional comments about approval of the minutes, or if there's a motion from anyone. I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as listed. Is there a second? All right, so we have a motion to approve from me and a second from Director Koo, and so I'll go into the roll call vote. Director Pine?
Yes.
Director Combs is a yes. Director Abrica?
Yes.
Director Koo?
Yes.
Okay, so we've approved the meeting minutes as listed earlier, and which was agenda item 3, and so we'll go on now to public comment. Individuals may speak on a non-agenda non-agendized topic for up to 3 minutes. Again, this is the opportunity to provide general public comment on meetings that are not on the agenda. And so I'll open it up to public comment.
Mika, this is Trish. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Trish Mulvey, Director Coombs. I noticed in the minutes that in an earlier meeting, Director Abrika had asked about the sediment buildup in the creek underneath Highway 101, and I was just wondering when we might have an update on that.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Mulvey, for the question. I'll pass it on to the staff and the executive director to answer.
Okay, if I may, through the chair. Thank you very much, Trish. We are in communication with the technical team at District 4 Caltrans. We, myself and Tess and Kevin have met with their assistant deputy director as well as their maintenance chief, department chief, and have a commitment from them for a work plan to be delivered and shared with us by October 1st. For sediment removal under Highway 101. And we have just scheduled a meeting on October 12th between District 4 Director Dina Altawasny and 2 of our board members, one representing Menlo Park, one representing East Palo Alto. We're coordinating their schedules to meet on the 12th. Assuming that everybody can coordinate for those dates, there will be that conversation. The area under Highway 101 is not in the JPA's jurisdiction. It is Caltrans jurisdiction, so we have no legal authority to actually get in there with any equipment to do anything. We are relying on Caltrans to do their part for maintenance and management. We are, I'm hoping, impressing upon them that we think that this is a high priority item. We are not the only organization with this concern, and this is not the only location with this concern. So I'm hoping that this is an accumulation of to increase their focus and priority on sediment management ubiquitously.
Thanks very much. That was very thorough. And I know October 1st is not very far away.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Mulvey, for the comments. Do we have any other public comments? Yeah, Mr. Hearn, please.
No, thank you. Thank you, Chair Coombs, and for this opportunity to say a few words. It's good to see you all again in person. Hope you had a good summer. Just a couple of information items, one in the past and one in the future. So last Saturday was Coastal Cleanup Day, and we at Grassroots Ecology put on 2 events, one at Cooley Landing and one right up the street here at the Alma Park. And that was when I attended, and we had 91 people registered. I think we had more than that actually showed up, including Boy Scout troops and the AP Environmental Studies crew from Menlo Lutheran High School, a lot of the usual suspects, and they were all very energetic and pulled out a lot of trash. And thanks to Menlo Park, we had some bins there to throw it in to get rid of it once we got it out of there. We had to leave some stuff in the creek, and I actually need to talk with Kevin about it because we have spots that were, like huge sofas and things like that, and a tree down and stuff like that. So it was and I personally took a whole truckload of metal up to Ecology and recycled it up there. So it was a really, really successful time. Everybody had a good time, went away feeling like they did good work. And when you see the piles of trash, it's always really heartwarming to know that people are care enough to do that kind of work. So that was in the past. And in the future, on, I believe it's October 11th, one of our local, several of our local groups are hosting a climate summit. I believe, Director Pine, you're going to be speaking at that. Is that correct? Yeah. And it's an all-day event that's being hosted by climate resilient communities, Nuestra Casa, I forget who else is doing it. And they're trying to engage young people and people from underserved communities in that effort. So I suggest you can, if you want to attend, you know, it should be quite a nice event. And it's a combination of large speeches and then people sitting down and actually talking about things that make a difference and how to make things happen in these local communities. So I encourage you to do so if you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment, Mr. Hearn. You have what? No other. Okay, so seeing no other public commenters, we'll close public comment and let the minutes reflect that Director Eisenberg has joined us. Cool. Okay, with that, we'll go on to information items, and let's call for public comment on. We can call for public comment on all the information items, right? Okay, so we'll call for public comment on information items A, B, and C. A, weather monitoring, demonstration of rain and stream flow gauges. B, conflict of interest code, notice of intent to amend, reposting to comply with the FPPC's requirements for specific language in the notice, and C, the executive director report. Is there anyone who wants to provide public comment on information items? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. And so is there, I'll take it to staff to kick off the discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, was there someone on the dais who wanted to say something? No, okay, thanks.
So this is Tess Byler, staff, and just was going to walk you through on what our rain and stream flow gauges and how to get to it on our webpage. So I'm just at the main webpage at www.sfcjpa.org. So navigate there, and then of all the JPA board meetings, which we're at, so just go over to the final one, and there's two options. There's a sandbag location map, and we're going to go to rain and streamfall gauges. So this page has been recently updated so that you know that we are no longer sending out emergency alerts, but if you're in San Mateo County, you can sign up for San Mateo County Alert. If you're in Santa Clara County, there's a link to that one. So there's a shortcut at the front, but I'm going to show you how to go about it if this is your first time. So this link right here, which is Contrail One Rain, that is the link that you would click on, and it's a username viewer, and the password is San Francisquito, case sensitive.
All one word.
Yep. So now that I've already done that, I'm going to click on it and it remembers me. So in order to pull up that map that was in your board packet, I just click on the map part. Otherwise, it's just collecting data so that you can see it. And you hover over it. This particular one that you're seeing is our rainfall gauge in Huddart Park. This one is in Wonderlick Park. Bear Creek at Sandhill. There's stream gauges at Bear Creek, Searsville Lake. And then we've got and the third one here is Los Troncos. We combine all of them into our combined tributaries, and that's what we look at mostly. And then down here is the longest standing San Francisquito Creek USGS rain gauge. And that one will have all the data for that stream flow gauges. So then I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I would like to show you, if, you know, just different views on it. But this is what we will use to figure out, along with the other subject matter experts and the NOAA rainfall forecast, the probability gauges, you know, many different sources of information. But when we look at these rain gauges, and if we look at the combined tributaries, there's trigger levels that we can use that will say, oh, based on this, we think it'll give us about 2 hours before it might overtop the banks downstream. Sure.
For the chair. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Sorry for being a little late. Question, is it necessary for us to password protect this? Because I do like the idea of the public getting as much access as possible.
I don't know why it was set up that way, but the username and password being right there on the front page allows anybody to just copy and paste viewer, San Francisquito into the fields. I can check with our Contrail and One Rain contractors and find out if there's any reason why it needs to have anything other than a click through to the screen.
Yeah, I mean, my preference would be to not even have that. I mean, a lot of our residents, constituents are seniors, and not that all seniors are bad at, internet stuff. And a lot of people access through their phones. So even though the login password is there, it's still just an added step. Maybe it's needed for some reason, but if it's not, that'd be great.
I can
Thank
check.
you.
Yeah, we did get hacked on it a couple of years ago, and we were getting 1 million messages from it. So that could be the reason.
Although
Hopefully
that
that's
was,
it.
yeah, so let me check with our contract provider and make sure that we can take off that interim step. And if it can just be a click through to that particular page without a login.
Thank you.
There are a couple of other gauges further down in the watershed in the downtown area where they are monitoring where Palo Alto has their monitors at the bridges, and there's a tidal monitor as well. So the very last circle is out by the bay. That's a helpful thing for us to gauge when there might be a very high tide at the same time as there is a large storm. Otherwise, as Tess said, many of our partners use this as well. San Mateo County refers to this. Santa Clara County refers to this. Our subject matter experts in public safety refer to this. It is, as Tess said, no longer part of an automated alert system, but it is absolutely used by our public safety, emergency preparedness, and emergency response colleagues. And it has a predictive capacity, particularly as we do when we are familiar with the watershed and we know if there's rain up here, it takes a certain amount of time for that to propagate through the system. And we have a time sense of, when that slug of rain will show up as a peak flow in the creek in the urban area. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much for the walkthrough. I know this is a follow-up of a discussion item from the last meeting, so very much appreciate the responsiveness. Right, so I think we can go on to
Stop share.
and so is there a staff talk through related to item B?
If I could prevail upon our legal counsel to give us a very quick synopsis of why we are bringing this one back again.
Sure. As you may recall, at one of the past meetings, the FPPC requires the agency to update its conflict of interest code regularly. I think it's every 2 years. And so we've provided that goes along with a notice. And there's some specific wording in the notice that has to be included. And unfortunately, it wasn't included last time. So we checked with the FPPC to see if that is indeed required. And they said that yes. So they said we can just simply repost the notice. And that's why it's before you today with the required language. And then there will be a notice and comment period. And assuming there are no comments received, as there were none the last time, then the updated conflict of interest code would be considered approved after that date.
Any questions from the dais? Or okay, well, thank you for that update. And then we'll go on to the executive director's report.
Okay. Just really quickly, it was a fairly brief report this time. Does anyone have any particular areas of interest, or I will just very quickly walk through the highlights of the report. And if you have anything that you'd like to stop and ask questions about or chime in on, please let me know. So we have new JPA issued cell phones. Up until very recently, we were using our own personal phones for work. That is no longer best practice. Please make sure that your contact information for each of us is updated in your mobile devices and on your organization systems. So website ADA compliance is also an important issue. I have a personal penchant for this because having once been my father's eyes and having to navigate through websites that were less than friendly for those without visual acuity, I am very sensitive to making sure that what we provide to the world is accessible for many different kinds of abilities and disabilities. I have to give credit where it's due. Our student intern, Antonia Minion, found a really cool service. So for those of us who are, I would say, normally abled, though our website looks exactly as it always has, but our service called Accessibility allows a user who has modification requirements to set what their specifications are on their phone, their tablet, or their laptop. So whether that's a screen reader or contrast enhancements or any other kind of accessibility feature, the Accessibility AI, if you will, translates our page to what they need to see, hear, or experience to make it an effectively accessible page for them. So Accessibility also provides us a monthly summary of and an audit of our website. So any updates we provide to, that we post to our website, Accessibility will give us a little checklist at the end of the month of, do you need to make any tune-ups? Are there any recommended changes that we could make to make our site even more accessible? So that is something that we have just implemented. Project updates, we're on track to,
could I have-
sorry, yes, Ruben.
Yeah, question on the, on the cell phones. I know it doesn't really involve us as elected officials, but do we have a resolution in place, or do we need to update anything that outlines the use of the phone and sometimes there may be requests for public information? Yeah, I'm just wondering whether we haven't filed a resolution, and if so, if we need to update it, that provides guidance on the use of any device by staff, actually. But it just reminded me the phones, cell phones.
As you may recall, at one of the prior meetings, the board did consider the updated policy regarding technology use, including cell phones by staff. And so that has come before the board and the policy has been approved already. It does regulate,
Okay.
how employees should use their employer provided phones.
Also including like when there's requests from the public and all that. I guess I forgot.
I believe it has some information about, the parameters of when they're expected to be accessible by phone.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I mean, I just go one question about the mobile phones, and maybe this was in the report that I missed. We're paying like sort of like a flat fee, right, across all of the usage, just not something that is going to go up based on someone's specific usage, right?
No,
So you get all the data, all the talk, and that's the fee, right? Just to make sure.
Yes,
Okay,
that is
well, that's cool. Thank you.
I don't think we're
Please-
going to be streaming Netflix on our
No,
phones.
no. I believe that's in our policy.
If you
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
as long as we're not going to have to pay more money for
Yeah,
it. Okay,
That's
cool.
not happening. All right. Any other questions on admin updates? Okay. Project updates. Channel survey is underway. The team, I understood, hearing from Jack Zhu today, that they actually wrapped up their survey work today. So that is coming along very well. We are also making great progress with the Schaff and Wheeler group, who are done with like 1.5 of their 3 tasks. So I anticipate coming to you with at least a verbal update on all of the Schaff and Wheeler work, as well as the channel survey work at the October meeting, and some more fulsome descriptions and analyses and potential recommendations by the November meeting. So we should have a path forward before the end of the year. In addition, so we are looking at adding a stream flow gauge. As you might recall, last winter, at least one of the flow gauges was knocked out of commission because it was literally washed away. So we want to have some redundancy in the system. We're working with our balance hydraulics contractor to put one on the Bear Creek tributary on Sand Hill Road, on a bridge on Sand Hill Road. So that is in the works. And we had the initial of the year multi-agency coordinating group meeting in this very room this morning, which was a kickoff of the winter season's discussion between all 5-member agencies, the counties, public safety, public works, and communications teams and subject matter experts for getting ready for this winter. There will be a tabletop MAC exercise planned for December. In addition, we are looking at an October 26th. Thank you very much, Menlo Park, for hosting. We have at last confirmation that Upper Laurel School in Menlo Park can host a public meeting. We're going to do an outreach and education meeting for the public on winter safety and winter preparedness. Each of our members are going to have some time on that agenda to say a particular thing that they would like to say about winter preparedness and what their cities are doing or what they would like their residents to know about. We're doing specialized outreach for each community. We're coordinating with the PIOs for what are the messages, what are the channels, how are we going to reach everyone in multiple languages. So we're working on October 26th plans. And what else? We already talked a little bit about sediment management at West Bayshore and Highway 101. We will certainly keep you up to date when we hear something from Caltrans at or before October 1st for their work plan. We are acting as the lead agency for all permitting. The City of Palo Alto's Newell Bridge project is the first element of the Reach 2 project, and we anticipate permits to be finalized and in place well in time for Palo Alto to commence with their bidding and to commence with construction next construction season.
And what's the target construction date or for?
2020, June 2024.
Yeah, so
Alright.
so being in the creek in June 15th is the earliest. June 15th would be the earliest you can do in-channel work, but there's a lot of prep work that you can do before. So I think they're thinking of awarding the contract April, May to get things going.
So there are a few Safer Bay project updates as well. October 6th, there is a San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority board tour. The SFBRA is coordinating this. It's not just for the Safer Bay project, it's for other South Bay projects as well. So if anyone is interested in joining that tour, there is an RSVP. It's a public meeting, but to have a sense of how many people are going to show up, they would like folks to RSVP. I think Director Abrica is going to join us and make a few remarks just to welcome folks and orient them to East Palo Alto. And if anyone else would like to come and do the same. And yes, and we'll be attending. So we're excited to host I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to October 6th, a Friday. And we can make sure that the board has an update on all the details and the RSVP link and make sure you have that information again. Yeah, so check your packet. And you want to talk about the community event? That was really cool.
So there are actually two safer community events on the 20th of September. Margaret and I divided, and she did the Planning and Transportation Commission for East Palo Alto, and I worked with our community-based organizations, Climate Resilient Communities and Nuestra Casa. We had more than 50 people there attend our meeting, and we updated a little bit about what the design concepts are for Safer Bay. But the group that was there following what they wanted to talk about was a lot of emergency prep. And that meeting did have simultaneous Spanish interpretation, and it was needed. So that's why we've talked about even possibly an additional emergency prep meeting. And Miko attended a meeting in Menlo Park last night or yesterday. She said it was excellent. Many of the same people were there. So I think we are doing a good job of getting the word out to people who may not have heard the news last year. Anything else?
For the East Palo Alto Commission, I think there were the commissioners and about, I don't know, half a dozen additional people. We did a bit of a walking tour out at Cooley Landing. There were a lot of questions that had to do with, can you help us relate to, like, how big are we talking about? How high is this going to be? Where is this going to be? So people are still, I think, needing more information about, we are in early planning stages. Nobody is coming out with a backhoe anytime soon. And I think it will be helpful to have images or examples where we can give people illustrations of how high are we talking about. It's like where I'm standing plus how high, how tall I am was a really good sort of generic reference of, oh, okay, now, you're not talking about 20 feet high wall, you're talking about, okay, I can visualize how high that would be if we're talking about you, where it is now plus you. So those sorts of things were helpful. But again, making sure people understand that this is a long process. We are in early stages. We are gathering information. We're seeking people's input about potential project impacts, and it's important for us to learn what they have to say.
Just a
That's it.
clarification.
Yeah.
This is the safety project, safer project.
Yeah, the Safer Bay
Safer,
project, which
right.
goes from the mouth of the San Francisco Creek where our Reach One project ended, so at Friendship Bridge, and goes north along the Bay shoreline, intersects with the Dumbarton Bridge approach, and then continues north and west along 84, and then it turns north at Bedwell Bayfront Park. 7.5 miles of shoreline.
Yeah,
East
okay.
Palo Alto's part, Menlo Park's part.
Okay.
And that's it. Any questions?
Any questions, comments from the dais on information? Please.
Yeah, when you mentioned the visuals or graphics, just be very careful. I'm just flashing back 10 years ago or so when, I think before we even started construction of Reach One. And this time it fell on the water district, but they produced a graphic that was very scary. And I remember, especially people in Menlo Park, were really up in arms because it made it seem we're going to have these huge walls along the creek. And, something happened, something went wrong, but that lasted for, the blowback just distorted the whole, conversation because it's sort of, anytime you put up anything, I'm sure first is like, nothing is planned, nothing is designed, but here's an idea. And so you have to be very careful to not, anyway, I'm just sort of flashing back on that. So because I do really remember that once the public gets a hold of something, you have to run the process through. And it really consumed a lot of time and energy that I felt could have been better used to even think about, well, yeah, what might it look like or not or whatever. Anyway, so that was just flashing back on that.
So what I would, thank you, and I think that that's a statement well taken. Even I heard about it. I wasn't around at the time. But what I think this group it might be a good visual, our completed creek, project, the Safer Bay project has very similar engineering design criteria. So the levees that we built, that end up at O'Connor Pump Station, our new Safer Bay levees will be a very similar height. So I think we can take pictures of those, people can walk by those. And in fact, the Restoration Authority tour, I will mention this and say, these levees will look like this.
Thanks. I didn't know about that. And I too, concerned that, that's a very concerning, event. And I could totally see, where my colleague was coming from here. So I'm also wondering, this is just kind of like a big, that I don't expect a big answer, but I think also at least listening to resident feedback that I receive, constituent feedback, I think often when it's very, very preliminary, I kind of, and this is not always the case, but sometimes still only one option is given when sometimes there's another option. And looking at, for example, the notes from, there's the study that showed that there's not enough capacity in the creek. Like that doesn't necessarily just lead to the solution of putting up walls. It also leads to a solution of increasing capacity in the creek, through managing sediment better or however. So I guess I would ask too, and maybe you're already doing this, but, and what I hear from the public is more the one about managing sediment better and increasing the creek capacity, which I think is also the environmentalist position, if I understand it correctly, but whatever. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of debates, but the bigger point is that sometimes in early stages, I think it feels nice for the public. And I know it feels nice for me and, up here also part of the public to kind of see that more than one option is being explored. Even when, the bulk of the opinion is leading down one path, I often feel when I'm part of the public, well, what about this other idea that, I and my neighbors really strenuously argued for? Is that even being considered? Does that make sense? Like, I feel like that kind of thing maybe goes down easier and does a better job of allowing input from our communities. Is this?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of it is, the project team. We are so fortunate with our HDR team and their subcontractors who have been with this project a long time and bring so much collective wisdom. But we're all approaching this from the standpoint of, we may have a lot of collective wisdom, but there are other people in the world, regulators, environmentalists, community members, who have ideas, inspiration, personal experience that they can share with us. We do not have all the answers or all the information. And we have a very, I think, a unique relationship with our contracted support for community outreach through Climate Resilient Communities in New Wester Casa, who are very strong, very well-respected intermediaries in the community with us and for us. So we have a great big open channel.
That's great. I mean, I do think this is something that Palo Alto City Council actually has a good record of doing pretty well too. When you look at the grade separation of trains, like Palo Alto worked with the community to propose a number of different alternatives. And I think that was it takes some time, but I think having the right approach ends up saving time, and having community support saves a lot of time too. And it's helpful, like you point out, in terms of getting the right answer. So thank you for that answer. I think that's really great.
Yeah, of course.
So we're still on winter preparation, right? And if I might be, or have you already?
We're on whatever you want to talk about, Director. So that's where we're at.
No. So I think, hearing from the community, they want to have better understanding of where the preparations are. One of the residents had mentioned that there's a lot of cut up branches and material in the creek. So it's already cut up, but is it going to be removed? And then how is it coordinated? Because I think they had a communication with either you or somebody else. But
probably my colleague Kevin, who is responsible for coordinating the annual creek maintenance walk. The practice that we have employed up to this point is all of the branches and things are cut up into small pieces, because as soon as we get a good rain, all of that gets flushed out to the bay. The wood that actually goes out to the bay provides really important habitat functions and ecological services for the marshes and for the bay. So taking it all out may look cosmetically better and may provide some sense of, I don't know, like reassurance, but it's not going to create a jam. It's small enough pieces that it will float and flow through the bridges and out to the bay. If there is any evidence that there is a jam happening. The city of Palo Alto and the city of East Palo Alto are preparing to have excavators on hand at the bridges to take out any large items. Last year, there was a refrigerator that was floating down the creek. There's some crazy stuff. So if things like that do happen and do pose a problem, the cities are prepared to handle that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think some of the residents are looking at all the debris and thinking, that there might be a jam. How is it going to be processed? I think that's a step that they needed to understand, that it does flow out and provide areas for the marshlands and so forth. Thank you.
And we can be sure to include that information in our materials for the October 26th event, in our newsletter, on our website, and in any FAQs that we hand out, so that more people understand that that conveyance process is actually a natural process, and we are attentive to preventing log jams.
Okay, and then the other matter is also the coordination efforts. I think the members of the public needs to have confidence that the coordination between all the jurisdictions is going to work out, and that they're talking and communicating with each other. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Director.
Yeah, I was just going to say, thanks for reminding me that we have had a series of ad hoc meetings. So the public works folks are getting together and talking. The PIO group was getting together and talking. There is an ad hoc sandbag team that's talking about how to coordinate the procurement and staging of sandbags and how to manage that when the event's over. Like, what do you do when the whole thing is done and you don't need your sandbags anymore? So all of that coordination is already happening. In addition, the conversation that began this morning at the MAC meeting, the multi-agency coordinating group meeting, identified a number of other issues, like what happens if there is a multiple catastrophe, like a multiple facet catastrophe. Floods and sustained power outages mean that cell phones don't necessarily work very well. So what are some alternatives for communications and coordination if we have like multiple crises? So all of those conversations are happening. They happen in pieces, and I'm confident that they are all going to come together at or before October 26th, so we can share all that information live and in person on the 26th, and describe how we're going forward.
So, I was going to add to board member Ku's question that I think it might be worth doing a little summary of what was done last time, because I know that especially on this question of inside the creek. So between University, Woodland was closed for a whole day between University and Newell Road. And I live nearby there, so I kind of walked around and, try not to interfere with the workers, but talking to them. And so I think there was really good work done between Palo Alto and East Palo Alto, but I think describing what is done, for example, if it's a big trunk, it needs to be pulled out, that's what happens. So people know that, because there were 2 or 3 big chunks, huge ones that were just blocking, and one of them was definitely creating a whole little dam. So, which is different from the debris and the cut up pieces. So yeah, I saw them how they sewed up some pieces, but others, they literally jerked them out and then they put them out. So, huge chunks. So I think just maybe a little summary, of what was done last year. And I thought it worked, very well, because there are 2 different things. And I think people are rightly concerned, there's some big trunks, they're gonna create a problem, but they do get pulled out. And then the other ones get chopped up and the water takes them. And so I saw them, running water is very efficient. I saw it carry all kinds of stuff. But
it is very
but the trunks can also just create, a dam.
Good.
So, I think just sort of letting people know what was already done to reassure them that the same thing will be done if necessary. And that definitely, I think the public works now are probably even better tuned into what might need to be done, fairly quickly as soon as the water, if it needs to have that.
Yep. And I would add just about trees in particular, we heard this morning from our colleagues at Stanford University that in their portion of the watershed on Stanford lands, they've identified over 4 dozen trees, trunks, branches, and all, that have fallen into the creek channel. And they will be cutting them up and removing the trunks and cutting up the smaller parts. But a great deal of the material that we saw coming downstream last year was from way outside Menlo Park or Palo Alto or East Palo Alto. It's from the upper watershed. So Stanford is a key partner in our success.
I can send you some pictures of the big, huge, tree trunk that was put on the side. I don't know how they did it, but
Yeah,
it was,
please do.
it was. Well, I'm just saying, I think people love it. They get reassured that don't worry. Stay there. Try to cut them off.
Thank you. I just want to have a follow-up to both Mayor Ku, and the previous comments too, is I totally agree with what both of you said. And I also think that at least from my understanding of what I've been hearing, is that, a lot of this stuff is unpredictable, and so Kevin may have everything cleared out one day, but then the next day a refrigerator comes floating down from the upper watershed. So I think also, in addition to what was said, that it'd be helpful for the residents and other stakeholders to have a phone number or something to call when a new impediment arises and maybe hasn't been taken care of right away. And, in the case that some of those smaller pieces, get jammed together into a bigger piece and can't unjam, we don't want, residents to engage in any dangerous activities of trying to, do it themselves. It'd be great. I think it'd be super helpful really to, if there's one phone number, and not expect people to know whether there's 3. So to the extent we could have I don't know what your all's opinion about paying for some coordinator part or something, but there's 4 phone numbers, it'd be really helpful to have one phone number where people can know, oh, look, there's a refrigerator, that arrived yesterday. I mean, because I doubt Kevin can be, checking out the entire creek in full every day. And
Right. So each city has their own referral system. Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park. So we will be publicizing those in our newsletters, in our flyers, in our FAQs at October 26th, in mailers, in everything that we get out to the public. People sometimes contact us too, and we help with that triage. We help with that direction. Where is your problem? What are you seeing? We'll come out and take a look if we're able to do that safely, or we will pick up the phone and call. We'll call Kevin in East Palo Alto, or we'll call, Michelle in Palo Alto, or whoever it is.
So I wonder if there's a way, I mean, maybe not for this flood season, but for next one, we as the JPA can do a better job of maybe coordinating that. Because if there's a refrigerator floating down a stream, and it's actually neither the responsibility of Palo Alto or East Palo Alto on the other side of the stream, or Palo Alto or Menlo Park on the other, it's expensive to deal with, just to, it just would be nice to have, not have East Palo Alto receive a lot of phone calls and Palo Alto receive a lot of phone calls, and that creates inefficiencies into the system to actually get this solved. If there's a way to better manage that so these things can be addressed more quickly, that would be helpful.
If I could, I would only say that it is one of those jurisdictions' responsibilities, right? And we don't have the authority as the JPA, if something is in Palo Alto's right away, to actually go into, not putting aside that we don't have the staff, we don't have the Public Works Department. It is just us sort of communicating to those entities that do have staff, that do have Public Works Departments. And so it's, it's a border, and it's on one side of the border, or it's on the other side of the border, and whoever side of the border it's on is ultimately who is responsible for it. And not only are they responsible for it, we don't have the authority to make ourselves responsible for it.
So is the stream the creek a line down the middle? Because don't things go back and forth? And
The line goes down the middle. The line goes down the middle, and
Okay,
Yeah.
am I alone? I mean, in thinking that's
Well-
kind of difficult, doesn't that?
Yeah,
create-
that's kind of why the
Borders are
JPA was
difficult.
created.
But creeks move, and so a refrigerator could go from one bank to the other bank.
Yeah, and so last winter, we took a lot of calls and a lot of emails, and we responded to every single one of them. And then either I would go out and take a look at it and try to decide, well, is it a tree on this side with a refrigerator? I think I would just see who could get out there as quickly as possible to get rid of it, who had the resources to do that. And then just being able to use our city's method for reporting these down trees.
Maybe getting reimbursed, because the truth of the matter is that as people try to, as these different cities try to figure out whose responsibility it is, people's homes get flooded. And, I think first and foremost, we need to put, our residents, first, am I wrong? I don't know.
Let me give you an example of what happened last year with East Palo Alto. I sent a message out. I wasn't certain where it was. East Palo Alto responded within a half an hour and removed the blockage. And it was actually in Menlo. So we will not worry about jurisdictions in an emergency for sure. And I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Director
I
Brito.
was going to, on this
Of
whole
course, please.
emergency, I think Jerry might remember and maybe David, but originally, if you remember, that it was in the mission of the JPA that we were going to be like in charge of emergency preparedness for the creek, which was
Response.
totally unrealistic, overly ambitious, unsustainable thing, right? But I do remember that the role we did play, maybe 15 years ago, is that we were kind of like a spark plug to get these different jurisdictions together. Even I remember the first time when Menlo Park Fire and Palo Alto Fire, I thought they talked all the time. They didn't. They didn't have a way to really coordinate their efforts or communicate, right? So I think the JPA did play a role and say like, get together, figure out systems. But on this question though, I think that the latest revision we made, which I think is wrong in this, we are not responsible and we should not create the impression that we are, because we're not capable of coordinating emergency preparedness. And so that's why this group got set up. I think they're the ones that can, coordinate within the different jurisdictions. We can be a sounding board, or we, as you say, people still call us, so we refer them out. And definitely when it starts with the jurisdictions, I know that, I did apologize to, Chair Combs last time when I found out that our public works had not communicated with Menlo Park, doing something on the sandbags with a little wall, even though I still think it didn't affect Menlo Park, but that was a breakdown in communications, but that was clearly EPA Menlo Park issue. We had nothing to do with it, the JPA, right? Yeah. And it's not like we asked JPA for permission or Menlo Park or anybody, right? We just did it. So, it's not a perfect system, but I think it is better than it was before, but I definitely don't want to go back to that way, even though it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that it sounds like a good idea, but if we start creating the perception again that we're in charge, people will then start calling us on it, and we just don't have the capability.
We are
And
robust participants.
so
We do not
I
direct
think we
it.
have played our role, and we still have a role to play, but it's gotten much better. Definitely the communication, which I think is the key. As long as people know, I feel they're okay. If they don't, it's when they don't know and they assume or they get misled, people get very upset because, we can only do so much.
So again, my focus is on taking on more responsibility. That would, yeah. So no, my communication is on ideally, a problem would be addressed before it becomes an emergency. There's a trunk floating down that needs to be addressed, an unpredicted, non-predicted trunk, and oh my gosh, there it came from nowhere. And before it creates a complete blockage and people are impacted by flooding. It'd be nice, just if they knew, and maybe it is a block by block, or I don't know. I think it's really hard to ask people to ascertain what side of the creek it's on unless it's very obvious, but it's just some phone number for them to call before it's an emergency. Because once it's an emergency, then people's homes are about to get harmed, and
If I could just chime in first, I want to with Director Obrika's comment. Yeah, I called you not because we're on this board together. I called you just because I had your number. Yours was the number I had. And so, and I do want to say, Director Eisenberg, your point is well taken. But I do want to acknowledge that across the cities, whether it's East Palo Alto, or Menlo Park, there are staffs and public work department who are very much focused on the creek, and especially during times of rain, who are out there monitoring it continuously. So I do want to acknowledge that that there are lots of people, very capable people who are out there monitoring the creek. And I even want to point out something that may seem trivial, but I saw where recently for the Pope Chaucer Bridge, the sidewalk curb where it's square, they recently, and I think this was a Palo Alto project, redid it, and now it's a road curve. I think what you say, which was it exactly where that backhoe sort of drives up to, so it can pick out things from the creek. And so again, not something you would ever notice, but obviously someone in Palo Alto, Menlo Park, somewhere was like, hey, that squared curve doesn't work for that backhoe, and we need to round that out. And so whoever did that, my hat's off to you. But I just want to say that's just one example of really the expertise that's monitoring that. But all that being said, I think your point is well taken, and yeah, but there's some limits to what we as an authority can do. But everything that we can do, I think your point is that we should do. And
well, my point is specifically that. I don't know. Thank you. So too advanced for me. My point is specifically that people have a number to call. That's really all. So they feel like they have someone to tell. And then, and it might be that they need to call Palo Alto's Public Works or Menlo Parks or, East Palo Alto's, and all that's good. I agree. This isn't our responsibility to address it. I just want, and I guess that's really, that is the individual responsibility of the various localities. So I guess maybe we can work with whoever to make sure. And sometimes it's Valley Water's responsibility. It's just, I get a lot of phone calls from people. What do we do if we see a trunk? And I want to just, if anything else, I want to give them a phone number to call. That's really all. And then, because often they just feel like they're helpless. They don't know who to tell.
And we'll make sure that all the relevant numbers are published widely, promoted widely, and people have, all of the alternatives.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about that. Do we have those key numbers on the website?
If they are not on our website now, they will be soon. We can make sure that our website includes for Menlo Park, for East Palo Alto, for
right.
Palo
That
Alto,
would be good.
and that will be published, of course, for our October 26th event as well. So
That's really it. I think that's great.
yeah,
And I
we can do
really-
that. Easy.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful to the hard work done by our local municipalities. I think they're awesome. So thank you. No disrespect to any of your
No.
cities.
Okay, totally cool. Well, information items, there's no action that needs to be taken, and so I think we'll move on to, unless staff has something
We
to
have a
do.
request for someone to speak.
A public comment?
Yes,
Okay. Oh,
thank you. Tom Reinfleisch?
Oh, hi, thank you. This is Tom Rindfleisch, Crescent Park Neighborhood Association. I really want to thank you for the recent conversation and to emphasize that there are two reasons for following through on this business of communication. One of them is that the people who live along the creek are some of your best observers of what is going on. And I have been in charge of the Crescent Park Neighborhood Association and have gotten, like during the New Year's Eve flood event, many contacts from people along the creek. Whom do I call to report something? A tree fell in the creek across from me and it's bridging the creek. piece of fence fell out of my yard or was blown out of my yard and is now into the creek, causing obstructions. And people don't know whom to call. It's a time of lots of stress. For example, the New Year's Eve flood happened in the middle of the night, and people may have power outages so that their computers or network is not working. And it's a really difficult time to be looking around for some numbers that you need to figure out whom to call. And because there are these 5 jurisdictions involved in the JPA, that becomes ever more confusing for people who are on the ground, residents who are observing what's going on and are trying to help. The other thing is, I'm referring back to Jack Shu's analysis or to attempt to recalibrate the creek. This business of having blockage in the creek, whether it's a refrigerator or a tree trunk or a fence or something else that doesn't happen to fit through a pinch point or a bridge and can cause a backup, is really important to document so that we can get the best analytic calibration of the creek and understand exactly what we ought to be doing in terms of the reach to improvement to minimize flooding for the people affected by basically originally Chaucer Bridge, but now other parts of the creek need to have the banks fortified, and we need to be able to do that as accurately and optimally as possible. So I really want to thank you for bringing up this topic and to emphasize how important it is when a major event happens like the New Year's Eve flood. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rindfleisch, thank you very much for the public comment. And so just since I want to officially say I opened public comment, and so since we don't just open public comment for one person, so if there was anyone else who would like to provide a public comment, feel free, Mr. Hearn.
Me on. Thank you. So I've just been thinking about this and thinking about what we do in Portola Valley. I have numbers and things on my computer, but I also have things on the refrigerator, right? Big thing. If this happens, here's a number. So maybe what we need to do is make a bunch of refrigerator magnets for people to have. And my understanding, and I may be wrong, is if somebody from Palo Alto doesn't know where to call, but they call Public Works from Palo Alto and they let you know where that is, the coordination happens so that if Menlo Park happens to be there with a crane or whatever, they will take care of it. So my understanding is they really, this is, Ruben, this is what we did long ago, is to get people talking to each other so that they set up plans ahead of time, and then they know each other personally, and they call each other and say, hey, do you have the equipment over there? And so my understanding is we can have the 5 numbers. And if you call one of them and you know where this thing is, whatever it is, they'll do the work of figuring out how to get it out of there. So don't worry too much about calling the right number at the right place at the right time. Just call in one of those numbers. And I think refrigerator magnets or something like that might work. Thank you.
That is awesome. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much for that idea. And so Margaret, when you bring that as like a budget addendum, like it seems as though you might have support for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Even better. Okay.
I'll go to each one of you and ask for a contribution.
Okay. No, totally fair.
I know a button maker too, come to think of it. He's a neighbor.
All right. All right, totally cool. Was it Director Koo, please?
Thank you. So earlier I was actually asking about winter preparation, but then we moved on, and what Tom had talked about was at that time during the emergency. So do we also have a contact with radio station like KZSU 90.1 FM? That's the Stanford station. Are they broadcasting? How does the public, do we know how the public, do they turn on their radios when there's no power? I think, for emergency preparedness here in Palo Alto, when we're doing our training for the CERT and for the neighborhood preparedness coordinators, that's the other mechanism for communication, which we tell them to go to KZSU 90.1 FM. So I just want to kind of put that forward so that there is also that avenue of communicating out to the public if they don't have their internet or whatever else there is.
Absolutely fabulous suggestion, Director Koo. I will bring that up with the MAC director, Palo Alto's own Ken Duker, and make sure that we have that on our list. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just one last thing,
Yep.
because that was on my mind, and definitely following that up, because I kind of get ambiguous answers. So you might want to check with, this whole group, right? Because my question has been, at what point, or is there some federal or state trigger or something that at some point an AM station becomes a source of information for, disasters, where people like just tune into whatever it is, wherever you are, and they will be doing not news reports, because the news reports, as good as they are, they only focus on certain things, particularly when it creates some controversy sometimes. They weren't prepared here, they weren't prepared to look what happened, but it's just a source of information. And also if that includes doing it in like the Spanish radio network or other networks that have multiple languages, that's always been a question that, frankly, I've never received a complete answer. It is one of those like, okay, next time I'll check again. And you mentioned KCSU because it's nearby, right? But
Yeah.
But it's as far as like, how does the public, talking about the public finding out, who's responsible for that, so that people are not calling all over the place? They might have family in some other place and they don't know. But anyway, that's just a general question. Like, is there some kind of federal emergency requirements or something that says at some point the emergency is so big that we want the public to turn into this radio station? AM. So
When I worked for
so-
KZSU 35 years ago, I remember that. There's
Well,
something like that,
But,
yeah.
but what is it exactly? I still don't,
Yeah, they'll know.
And is it,
They'll know.
only when there's a very serious one, I guess, and, maybe ours doesn't qualify. But at some point, that's still good information, particularly when we know, knock on wood, we won't have an earthquake. But whenever there is a major emergency and everything goes down, the radio hopefully will still be on. But then how do people?
So, right. So that's a great question. It's an area I know nothing about. I am delighted to go look into that some more.
Okay. Director Plank, no, okay. Well, then I will close the simultaneous public comment board discussion for this agenda item. And thank you everyone for the comments and the for the discussion. And so we'll move on to agenda item 6, board member announcements, information items, and requests. Are there any board members who would like to make an announcement? Okay, with that, we will then adjourn the meeting. So thank you. And I will be adjourning a new meeting, or at least not